Hello and welcome to this session on trade life cycle of OTC products. As you have already learned, there are two main types of TLC. Over-the-counter TLC and exchange-traded TLC. This module will focus on the TLC of OTC products. In this session, you will learn about pre-trade activities and workflow, trade initiation, execution, capture, reporting, validation, verification, enrichment or drafting, confirmation or affirmation, and settlement and reconciliation. Prior to the start of a TLC, there are various basic setups required. Let's look at these prerequisites. First, we need to ensure that the technology is in place with the form of sales and trading system, middle and back office operation system. Next, we need to check the risk mitigation systems. These systems on a real-time basis look at the market, credit, liquidity, currency risk that the firm is facing and actively publish the information to the front office in order to speculate further or hedge their positions. Next, we will open a client's account and make the necessary documentation as per the regulatory guidelines. We must also ensure that we support activities and information such as instrument setups, pricing, brokers, etc. and they are all set up properly. Next, the legal and compliance team will check if the client is approved to trade into a set of products. For example, if he is a retail customer, the compliance team may not allow the front office to sell a product to the client. Then we need to assure documentation standards are in place. Standards such as ISDA, which is the short form of International Swaps and Derivatives Association, help counterparties to agree to trade via legal documents. Finally, supporting teams such as anti-money laundering, taxation, sanction teams will perform the respective checks to ensure that the client is bringing in clean and legal money into the organization. The front office will then bring the respective teams to a common forum to discuss the client requirements and trade structure. The various stakeholders included in this are legal teams, compliance and operation teams, finance departments such as tax and treasury, market risk and credit risk department, and the IT department, and the audit teams. This is done to ensure that the required setups, both internal and external, are ready to prior trade being executed by the front office and the client. There are various tools used in order to trade. They include email, phone, face-to-face, platforms provided by Thomson Reuters and Bloomberg, platforms created by banks such as dark pools such as CrowdFinders, LX, that is Liquidity Cross Bark, Night Vision, Sigma X, and electronic trading tools such as algo trading, high frequency trading, also known as HFT for short. Once we have completed pre-trading requirements, we are then ready to get on the trade life cycle. There are multiple stages in a typical trade life cycle. Firstly, the front office conducts steps such as trade initiation, execution, and capture. Then the middle office performs transaction reporting, validation, and verification. And finally, the back office performs activities such as enrichment or drafting, confirmation or affirmation, and settlement and reconciliation. Bear in mind that this classification is indicative and can sometimes differ as per bank structure and process. Let us now look at the first step of OTC TLC, which is trade initiation. Once the pre-setups are complete, the front office can then begin the trade. Here, the front office of an organization will begin the negotiation of trade economics with the client. They can also publish prices to the other market participants at that time. The terms of trade are negotiated between the two parties. Next, once the trade economics are agreed between two counterparties, they exchange an acceptance message with each other. This could be something like agreed, okay, done, that's agreed, fine, or so on. This signifies that front offices of both counterparties agree to trade economics. This stage is also known as execution or order matching. Here, a term sheet or a recap is generated which recaps the economics of the trade. In case a broker is used to negotiate the trade with each trader, then broker will generate a broker recap, send it to both front offices. Next step is the process called as trade capture. Once the trades have been executed by the front office, the next step is to capture the trade economics onto the risk management system or RMS. This is also known as trade recording or booking. Trade capture is extremely important as the RMS highlights the potential profit and loss and position of the firm. Every organization needs a snapshot of all trades to identify their profit and loss position in the market. Market factors such as interest rates, share prices, currency rates, etc. are continuously changing. Hence, the RMS will give the traders a quick overview on the profit and loss of their trades that has been given to them and whether they are long or short on a particular product. Here's an example of trade capture. If a trader captures a trade with a quantity of 200 shares instead of 2000 that he has executed, his view on the company will only be 200 shares. This is what his RMS is reflecting. If he is making a loss and decides to close his position at 200 shares, he will not have any view on the adverse price changes on the remaining 1800 shares. In addition, the complete TLC is dependent on the trade being captured as all operational activities are based on trades processed from RMS. All trades are sent to middle and back office systems from the RMS. Hence, if the trade is not captured in RMS, it will not be processed by both middle office and the back office. Next is here a sample RMS which contains the required trade economics that has been agreed with the counterparty and captured. The image shows a foreign exchange trade which contains trade economics such as trade date, settle date, exchange rate and so on. Next, we move on to the role of middle office in a TLC. The new changes in OTC market included transaction reporting and the setup of swaps execution facility. Prior to the 2008 crisis, the regulators didn't have a clear view on the number of trades and exposures of the various market participants. You ask why? Because the reporting was not happening. The solution was to set up a centralized trading facility known as Swaps Execution Facility or SEF. Here, both parties will quote their prices onto a platform and then accept each other's prices. The SEF will then report the transaction onto a common platform within 30 minutes. This is known as Swaps Data Repository or SDR. The reporting process has aims to identify the amount of exposure that participants in the market hold and take appropriate steps in order to minimize any potential systemic risk at an earlier stage. In addition, any other information such as beneficial owner of the trades, correction on the economics reported earlier, etc. should be published to the regulator. The next step in process and very important function of the middle office is trade validation. Here, the middle office validates every trade captured in the RMS to ensure that the trade and the trader are within limits. Under the trade validation stage, the middle office will also check if the trade captured in RMS has been done within the limits set by the organization. Every trader will have a limit on notional per trade currencies position that they can trade on a daily or weekly or monthly basis. A trade may have limits such as trade only swaps, notional per trade to be within $50 million or equivalent. The counterparty should only be from the American continent or the currency should be either in US dollars, pounds, euros or Australian dollars. Thus, it can be said that the middle office acts as a gatekeeper to ensure that all trades are booked within the limits usually set in supporting system known as reference data management RDM. Any exception to trading limits will then be escalated to the head of the trading desk to mitigate. Thus, it can be concluded that the main aim of validation is to ensure that the trades have been agreed within the limit set. It should also be noted that trade validation does not include checking the accuracy of the booking itself. The next stage in the TLC is verification, which is when the accuracy of the booking is checked. Here, the middle office will check if the trades have been captured accurately by trader. To perform this function, they will refer to the term sheet generated as part of the trade execution stage and then compare it to the trade capture in RMS. Any differences or breaks identified will then be escalated to the trader to advise. If there are no discrepancies, verification will be deemed completed. The trade verification is a crucial step as the middle office needs to ensure that the profit and loss position of RMS is completely accurate. It is also important to remember that all the speculation versus hedging that traders undertake are based on the information provided by their RMS. Any kind of mistake here can lead to implementation of incorrect strategies in the market itself. This is the last process undertaken by the middle office, and we now move on to the back office functions. The next stage in TLC is trade enrichment. Once the trade has been validated and verified by middle office, it then needs to be enriched with additional details to help with confirmation. For example, if the confirmation needs to be performed using documents, then the drafting team will prepare a legal document. The document will be enriched with trade economics from RMS, legal language, settlement instructions, and signatures for RDM. In other words, enrichment means adding more details to the trade in order to process it for the next operation process. The details captures in RMS includes only the trades and economics. In order to complete the TLC, there are other additional details required such as standard settlement instructions, SSIS. All such details are added to the trade as part of the enrichment stage. In addition, the trade needs to be legally accepted by both parties. In the end, a legal document ISGA is finally drafted or enriched with the economics from the RMS, legal language, settlement instructions and signatures and sent for the next operation process. Let us now look at the confirmation process. Until this stage, the trade has been agreed by front office of the two organizations with no legal acceptance. The confirmation process implies that the back offices of counterparties will sign a legal document that includes the economics, non-economics and signatures of the two parties of the transaction. In the OTC market, the International Swaps and Derivatives Association (ISDA) has standardized the confirmation templates. Once the document is signed, it is a legal acceptance of the terms and conditions of the trade. If the market has evolved, then confirmations can use electronic formats rather than documentation. The electronic forms of confirmation include SWIFT for foreign exchange transaction and DTCC for swaps. Next, we will look at the timeline of a confirmation. To begin with, the trade plus 0 is trade initiation or execution or booking. Next, T plus 1 to T plus 3 is for drafting of confirmation, which includes trade economics and legal language. Then T plus 4 is for approval and transmission. Next is T plus 5, which signifies receipt by the counterparty. Then T plus 6 to T plus 21 is when the document is reviewed. This is a time-taking process as the counterparty will have to review the complete document, carefully considering every word in the document to ensure that the terms mentioned in it are acceptable to them. Next, T plus 22 is when a feedback on a document is taken with issues or no issues. Then T plus 23 implies that the document has been sent for signatures. T plus 24 when it is signed and transmitted back to the client. And finally, T plus 25 signifies that the trade is now legally confirmed. However, there are some drawbacks of this timeline. The counterparty will be able to revert only after T plus 22 if there are any issues with the trade. This will in turn mean that in case the trader has made a mistake while capturing the trade in RMS, he will be informed only after T plus 22, which would be too late and may result in a massive profit and loss impact on the firm. However, such a scenario is likely to occur in a case when we assume that the trade has not been verified by middle office, or that the middle office has verified the trade but made an error. In addition, among the various details drafted in legal document which uses economics and legal language, the biggest impact on the profit and loss is from the economics, but a large amount of time consumed in reviewing the document is due to legal language. In order to ensure that the trade economics are accurate as soon as possible, other process called as affirmation was created. Let us now come to the next step, which is known as trade affirmation. This is a stage where the two counterparties will affirm the trade economics of the transaction with each other. It is called trade affirmation because the investment bank is required to be proactive and input the trade details for the buy side firm to check and respond to the via affirmation platform. Trades are required to be affirmed if the value of the payment is high. It is usually done using emails and telephone calls to agree to the trade economics. Please note that affirmation is done to ensure that the details provided in the economics are accurate. Once the process is complete, the two counterparties now known that their RMSs are accurate. This process is usually done with T plus 3. T plus 0 is when the trade is booked. T plus 1 is when affirmation email is sent out, and T plus 3 is when the counterparties affirm the trade economics. So what is settlement? Settlement means the movement of cash and securities between two parties as a transaction. It is usually split into three main subfunctions: the pre-settlement, which is 2 or 3 days before the settlement date, the settlement, which is the settlement date, and the post-settlement, which is after the settlement date. Let us start with the first part of the settlement process, known as pre-settlement. Pre-settlement includes the step in which the two parties will agree to the settlement amount and instructions 2 to 3 days prior to the settlement date. The instructions are generally known as standard settlement instructions, as SIs. This is done to ensure that in case there are any discrepancies between two parties on either amounts or SSIs, they will be able to resolve it by the settlement date. While some of the products, for example, equity shares, futures, etc., have very little calculation for their settlement, other products such as FX, options, bonds, swaps generally have a lot more. Continuing with pre-settlement, the back office team will also perform activities such as funding. Funding is done to ensure that the respective bank accounts of various currencies are sufficiently funded. Funding is done to ensure that the respective bank accounts of various currencies are sufficiently funded and have the required balances. It is important to remember that investment banks buy and sell thousands of trades per day and hence need to ensure that they have enough money kept in their bank accounts, as they will factor in all receipts and payments across the trades to ensure that they will be able to honor any payment due. Any errors in either the pre-settlement or the funding function can lead to fines, interest, claims, and reputational losses. Thus, to prevent this, the investment bank will check if the amounts and instructions are accurate and the account balances are appropriately funded. In some investment banks, the funding functions are also known as treasury funding departments. Now, let us look at how a settlement is done. Once the pre-settlement functions are complete, the parties of a transaction will then have the process of instructing the agent, bank or custodian to transfer cash or securities to the counterparties known in settlement. It takes place on a date known as settlement date. For example, for a bond, the buyer will get the ownership of the bond and pay the dirty price to the seller. Once the settlement teams have completed the settlements process on the settlement date, the next process is handled by post-settlement team. The role of post-settlement team is simple. If the cash or securities are expected to be received, have they received them? If cash securities are expected to be paid, have they paid them? In other words, the role of post-settlement team is to check if the internal receipts and payments match that external receipts and payments. This process is also called reconciliation. If either of the two do not take place, then the transaction is said to have failed. So there is a quick recap of trade life cycle process of a transaction that starts at front office and continues through the middle office and ends with the back office. As you have learnt in this topic, the front office handles activities such as initiation, execution and capture. The middle office takes care of reporting, validation and verification, and the back office handles the last steps such as enrichment, confirmation and settlements and reconciliations. Finally, here is the workflow of trade life cycle, which is being displayed from a timeline perspective, that is what steps are performed on which date. You have now reached the end of this topic on trade life cycle of OTC products. We hope you found the session insightful. Thank you.